Are we
Okay.
recording?
What's that?
Are we recording?
We are now. Thanks for the reminder.
Check that box.
Yep. All right. We are beginning week 2 of Macro Online. This is so much fun. I might have to do this on purpose next year. Kidding. Come on, that wasn't even worthy of a smile from you guys. Thank you, Lillian. I appreciate that. That's your extra credit for today. I wanted to thank you guys. You did a great job of getting your homework in that was due on Sunday. This may be the first time that we've had 100% turning it in on time, so thank you very much. Hopefully, you will do even better for the Wednesday assignment.
You gonna tell us the answer?
First, I want Sid to speak. Sid, your body language was just like you put your finger in an electrical socket.
How can we do better than 100%?
Yes, exactly. Somebody's paying attention at least. If I were President Trump, I would just claim that we can, but I'm not, and so I won't. All right. Jack got a smile, gave me a smile. That's good. Okay. I know this is harder than normal school. I appreciate all the hard work that you're doing. I have bragged about you guys to my colleagues who say things like, well, I don't know if anybody's showing up. You know, I haven't heard from these students. Don't know anything about it. Anyway, good times. All right, just to remind you where we are. We are, oh, yeah, you probably can't see that because I haven't shared it with you. Going back to figure 16 from the other day, we put our IS and LM curves together and identified the general equilibrium here where both the product market and the money market are in equilibrium. We know that intersection defines both the equilibrium level of GDP and also equilibrium interest rate, though it's not marked here. And then I asked the question, does this equilibrium imply that we have full employment? In other words, does equilibrium in the product market and the money market imply that the labor market is also in equilibrium? And the answer, as you can see here, is no, not quite. All right, moving on to the next section. The government has 2 tools that they can use, or 2 sets of tools, since there's more than one way to do these things, to nudge the economy forward to increase employment. First tool is monetary policy. The second tool is fiscal policy. We're going to talk about both of them today. They were each sort of designed, or I should say the ISLM model was designed to be able to illustrate monetary and fiscal policy both. Okay, so let's start with a definition. Sid, if you yawn again like that, I'm likely to call on you. What, were you out clubbing last night? Is that it?
I stayed up watching another episode of Watchmen. Need to catch up on it.
I understand. Okay, so what is monetary policy? Everybody's looking down. Jess, what is monetary policy? Have you heard of it? Good.
Yes, sorry, I didn't know
Okay.
it was on.
Okay, so what is monetary policy? Didn't you do the Fed challenge?
No, I did not.
Okay, so who can help Jess out, because she's in the spotlight and terribly embarrassed at this moment. What is monetary policy?
It's how the supply of money is regulated.
yes and no. Hey, Stefan, glad you could join us.
Hey, how's it going?
Monetary policy is how the Federal Reserve manages the supply of money, interest rates, and credit conditions generally, okay? So the Fed is able to make credit more or less available to try to stimulate the economy. Okay, you can see that on the graph here. In figure 17, we have, just as Matthew said, we have increased the money supply. So the LM curve, when you increase the money supply, what does the LM curve do? Jess, look at the
Sorry.
graph.
What?
When you increase the money supply, what does the LM curve do?
Increases?
Increases. What does that mean?
Shifts,
Yes. Shifts to the
right?
shifts to the right. As Alex likes to say, you're now back in the plus column. Okay, so let's think about what goes on here. Anybody, even my children, when they were little, could identify the equilibrium. They could shift the curves and identify the equilibrium even when they didn't know what was going on. So we want to understand the economics here. The graph gives us a clue about what's going on, but we need to figure out the economics. If you go back to the money supply, money demand graph, which is not here, you can see kind of what's going on. What happens is the vertical money supply curve is going to shift to the right. That's going to create a situation of excess supply in financial markets. The result is interest rates are going to fall. And you can see that on the LM curve. We started here at this interest rate, and interest rates fall to this level, okay? So the decrease in the interest rate caused by the shift in the LM curve is literally causing a movement along IS, along and down. So what's going on there? Well, the graph says GDP is going to grow, but that hides a lot of really cool stuff. Think back to the product market, because as we're moving along the IS curve, we are operating in the product market. What do lower interest rates do to autonomous expenditure? Hannah, how about you? What do you think, Hannah?
I want to say it increases it.
It does, it does. Lower interest rates stimulate business investment, stimulate consumer purchases of durable goods and houses, right? And so the increase in A plus I is going to cause GDP to rise. And we can see that as the movement down the IS curve. So when the dust settles as the result of monetary policy, we have a lower interest rate, but we have GDP as close to potential as we can get it. The graph makes it look easy. You just shift the curve the right amount. In the real world, it's of course more complicated. You know, this may take a couple of rounds until you get it exactly where you want it to be. All right. So an expansionary monetary policy shows as a rightward shift in the LM curve. A contractionary monetary policy would be the opposite. Everybody understand? Anybody have questions about that?
I have a question on the monetary policy. Is the exchange rate also included in monetary policy?
Yes. Okay. For most countries, most countries are open economies in the sense that not only do they trade internationally, but their financial systems are open as well. And certainly the UK has a long history of that. So people outside of the economy may choose to move their money into the UK to make an investment, a financial investment, or they can move their money out of the UK. And British residents can do the same thing. You know, they can repatriate money that they've invested abroad, or they can send it out to some country where they expect to get a better rate of return. Okay, what this means is that an important part of monetary policy is not just managing interest rates, domestic interest rates, but also paying attention to the exchange rate, okay? And the reason why is because for most countries, their domestic financial systems are relatively small compared to the rest of the world. So there's a lot of potential for money to flow in and out. And anytime money flows internationally, there's going to be an impact on the exchange rate, okay? Now, having said that, it is less of an issue in the US, and the reason why, well, let me ask you, why is that less of a thing in the US? And by thing, I mean paying attention to the exchange rate, the foreign exchange value of the dollar. Why is that less of a thing in the US?
Is it because a lot of
foreign nations tend to hold their current a large reserve of US dollars anyway?
That's certainly that is certainly true. But what I was looking for was something a little bit different, and that is the US financial system is a sizable enough portion of the world that they don't have to worry so much about what the rest of the world is doing. And so the exchange rate is something that the Fed pays attention to, but it doesn't have the importance that it would in a country like the UK. Okay, so Jack, those are really good questions. I will count on you IA types to keep me honest with respect to the global economy here. Other questions? All right, then we can move on to fiscal policy. What does fiscal policy mean? Greg, how about you? What's fiscal policy?
It's like, isn't it like the use of money or revenue in the government?
Not money. Okay, fiscal means deficit. So fiscal policy is changing the size of the federal deficit, either changing government spending or changing tax rates. So any intentional changing of tax rates or government spending constitutes fiscal policy. Okay, so we can go to our next graph. In the same way that we started from a situation less than our potential output, less than full employment, the same thing can be true of fiscal policy. But in this case, when we say increase government spending to stimulate the economy, which curve is going to shift?
The IS curve.
It is the IS curve, as you can see here. Okay, so in an ideal scenario, the IS curve shifts to the right, GDP grows, and we get rid of that output gap. Now, again, you want to know the details of what's going on. Okay, so the initial impact comes right out of the income expenditure model. An increase in government spending is an increase in autonomous expenditure. That's going to shift the EP line up, and GDP is going to grow to here, at least potentially. Okay? In other words, ceteris paribus, this is how much GDP grows. Now, you probably noticed that that's not an equilibrium point. Got that, Quinn? Quinn.
Got that. Yes. I see.
Okay. So what's going to happen here is the following. As GDP starts to grow, what happens to the demand for money?
It'll increase.
It's going to increase. So now we have a situation where money demand is greater than money supply. There's a shortage in financial markets. The way that shortage is resolved is interest rates start to rise. Okay? And as they do, we start to slide up the new IS curve towards this new equilibrium point. What's going on as we slide up the IS curve? Well, we know that higher interest rates are going to reduce autonomous expenditure. Okay, so higher interest rates, less business investment, less consumer spending on durable goods and stuff like that, less home purchases. Reductions in autonomous expenditure cause GDP to decline, or rather, since this is all happening simultaneously, GDP only grows this far. It doesn't grow all the way to here. So the result of an expansionary fiscal policy is going to be higher GDP, yes, but also higher interest rates. Does everybody see that? Any questions about that?
I've got a quick question on that.
Sure.
So why would we opt for that as opposed to expansionary monetary policy where you can increase GDP and lower interest rates?
Okay, great question. The answer is that you could do either. In most countries, the fiscal authorities and the monetary authorities are the same people. And so they can simply make a choice which way they want to go. In the US, the fiscal authorities are the Congress and the monetary authorities are the Fed, and they are intentionally separate so that we have at least one voice helping to do the right thing. Congress doesn't always do the right thing. Okay, the answer is you can use fiscal policy or monetary policy to fix the problem. What happens to interest rates is kind of a side effect. So there may be reasons to use one over the other, but they both work, or at least they both can work. But that introduces a really interesting part of the story, a part that I just kind of glided over without really explaining the details. And that is the crowding out effect. Okay, the crowding out effect is really important. The crowding out effect is defined as the reduction of investment and, well, the reduction in autonomous spending that occurs as a result of the expansionary fiscal policy when interest rates start to rise. Okay, so the crowding out is what's responsible for GDP to not grow as much.
Can you repeat that definition one more time,
Sure.
please?
Sure. Crowding out is the reduction in investment spending caused by the increase in interest rates, caused by the expansionary fiscal policy. Okay, now I'm not done. We're gonna drill into this in more detail. Okay. All right, let me switch what I'm sharing with you and see if I can pull up the whiteboard. It worked the other day, so it should work today, right? Here we go. Awesome. All right. Draw. Dare I do this? Ooh, that's kind of pretty. Is it going to let me do what I want to do, though? All right, let's make this pale blue. It doesn't like me. Okay, we'll try it again. Try this one. You know, this is really dumb. I'm just going to draw my own circle. It won't be perfect, but it will be better, I think. All right, draw. And let's, not a line, maybe a squiggle. Okay. Nice. This is going to do it. I know you're not impressed. Okay, but you should be. Okay. Text. Pot of savings. Is this going to let me do this someday? Yeah, okay, cool. This is the pot of savings. Okay, I am mixing my metaphors here. It is both a pot and also, at the same time, it is a pie. Ooh, that didn't work. There we go. There's the pie. Okay. Now, when I think this is going to be an Aspen question. I'm just thinking. I'm feeling that. Okay. When the government runs a deficit, okay, when the government increases spending, where does it get the money for those purchases? It has three options. All right. What are the options?
Taxes.
It can certainly raise taxes. We generally don't do that in this country. And in any case, raising taxes at the same time as government spending won't increase the deficit, which means it's not going to have the impact that we want. So taxes are kind of ruled out of the story here. What's option number 2?
They borrow from other countries.
Well, they borrow.
China.
Thank you, Jack. Yeah, they borrow, right? And where they borrow is they borrow in financial markets, but really they're borrowing from the pot of savings in the United States. So this is the US financial market, really. Okay, so let's say, let's see if I can change this. Here is the government share of borrowing. Everything else is private. Okay. Now, so what is this private borrowing? Well, it is you guys borrowing money to go to school. That's an example of private borrowing. It's businesses borrowing to expand their factory or to buy new equipment. It is individuals getting mortgages to buy houses, or people borrowing money to get cars. So all of this private borrowing is limited by the pot of savings. Okay, so when government runs a deficit, they're taking a bite out of the pot of savings. When government decides to run a bigger deficit, let me show you what happens. Let me see if the eraser works. Ooh, that worked. Kind of worked too well. Okay, here's the original bite of the government. Now, Government takes a bigger bite. Okay, so when government borrows more because of its expansionary fiscal policy, and this is the Aspen part of the question, when government borrows more, what happens to private borrowing, Aspen?
There's less money available for private.
Yeah, exactly. Government takes a bigger bite. Why do private folks decide not to borrow?
Would interest rates be higher?
Yes, they would, right? So the increase in demand for loanable funds by the government pushes up interest rates for everyone else. The government doesn't really care what they have to pay for the money. They'll pay whatever it takes, whatever interest rate. But private folks aren't like that. Businesses may decide that with higher interest rates, their investment plans are no longer profitable, okay? And the same thing for any kind of private borrowing, okay? So the decrease in private borrowing, let me just see if I can draw that part back in, change the color to this one. Okay. This increase in government borrowing is a decrease in private borrowing and a decrease in private expenditure. That is literally the crowding out that's taking place here. So to me, the question isn't, why does crowding out occur? To me, the question is, why isn't crowding out complete? Because what we're saying here is the government borrows $100 billion more dollars, but the private sector only cuts back on their investment by $50 billion, some fraction of the total, right? How do we know that? Do you guys remember? You have to go back to the last diagram. Let me do that. So let me stop sharing this and go back to sharing. No, not that one. Back to sharing this one. Why did GDP grow after all? It grew because on balance, there was still a net increase in total planned expenditure. It wasn't the full amount, right? So there was a decrease, which was the effects of the crowding out, but there was still a net positive increase in total planned expenditure. That's why GDP went up. And that's how we know that the crowding out was only partial, not 100%. So the bad news is that fiscal policy isn't as effective as was once thought. But the good news is that fiscal policy still works. So worst case, you increase government spending by twice as much as you wanted to hit your target still, knowing that, you know, half of that isn't going to go anywhere. Okay, it's about to get really cool, guys. I know you're probably wondering, how can this get better? But it's definitely going to get better. I'm going to show you one of my favorite graphs in the entire course. I regret to say it's hand-drawn, and therefore, it's not perfect. All right, let's go back to the whiteboard. Share whiteboard. Oh, look at that, it came back. This is interesting. What happens if I do this? Ah, okay, I have new whiteboard. All right, so let me draw a little something here. Okay, So you probably want to wait until I'm done because it's going to take a fair amount of space up. Well, we'll start with this square. Ooh, this is harder than it looks. Okay. It doesn't have to be an actual rectangle. I just made it a rectangle. Okay, we'll build one out here. Nope. All right. Then we've got down here is another one.
Aspen, your cat is very cute.
Thank you. She has no boundaries.
All right, and then I wish there was a way to copy. Guess there isn't. So we'll just go like this. All right. Okay, this here is, let's try text. Supply. No, we need to change the font, that's for sure. Supply of funds in financial markets. Okay, so this upper rectangle is the supply of funds in financial markets. Lower rectangle, what do you think? Demand for funds in financial markets. All right. Where does the supply of funds in financial markets come from? Well, it comes primarily from households. So let's draw ourselves a little households block. HH is households, okay? And then we can draw an arrow like this. So households through savings supply funds to financial markets, okay? We're gonna put government over here. All right. Actually, governments, because state and local governments can do this as well. And then we're going to draw a line there to represent government borrowing. Okay. To keep things balanced, I think we will draw another square here, another rectangle. And then this is business. Okay. And then we have, who do we have left, Jack?
Foreign investment.
Look at that. I just learned how to draw it quickly. Okay. Who's over here? Rest of the world. Okay, now each of these 4 sectors, actually, the flows could go either way, either into financial markets, supplying funds, supplying savings, or out of financial markets. But government very, very, very rarely, at least in the US, do they do anything other than run deficits and borrow money. Businesses go both ways, but on balance, they're savers. Households go both ways, but on balance, they're savers. And rest of the world, we're just going to draw them as contributing to the party here, supply of financial markets. All right, up here, the Fed. The Fed supplies funds to financial markets, right? And then, and this is monetary policy, right? And then this here is interesting. This is, let's see if I can, money in your pocket. Okay, so let's see. Aspen. Aspen, let's suppose you have a purse.
Okay.
What's in the purse?
Money.
Exactly. Okay, is that money in the financial system at the moment? No, it is not, because it's not under the, it's not in a bank account, it's not a loan, it's outside the financial system. So in the same way that the Federal Reserve is outside the financial system, the money in your purse or the money in your pocket, that's what I prefer to think of it as, is money that's outside the financial system. Okay. Now, let me draw one more arrow. Okay, now I'm not going to tell you what's important here, but I imagine that Ankitha can tell us. Not yet. Okay, now remember, let's try to remember what the question was that we were trying to answer. Does anybody remember the question? This is your opportunity to shine.
Didn't you ask why isn't crowding out complete?
That's the question. Why isn't crowding out complete? Let's think about this. Let's run through our scenario again. Okay. Let's suppose that, can I do this freehand? Probably. Maybe it'll be ugly. No, that one didn't take. I need a circle. I need a squiggle. There we go. Okay. the government borrowed $100 billion from financial markets, right? The question is, why does that not equate to $100 billion less in financial markets? Okay, right? If we went back to our previous, let's see, this one, hey, look at that, I'm getting better, right? If this is 100, 1, 0, 0, if the government is taking $100 billion more, why does that not translate into $100 billion less for the private sector? Do you understand the question at least? Hannah, you good with that? Okay.
Would it have something to do with the fact that not all of the money in the private sector is in financial markets at one time?
It would have something to do with that. Where else is it?
It's in your pocket.
Exactly right. Way to go, Quinn. There is money in your pocket. Okay. Now, when governments borrow $100 billion more, what happens to interest rates?
They go up.
They go up, yes. Now, ceteris paribus, that would reduce the demand for funds by businesses and households and everybody else, right? Not the government, though. Okay, ceteris paribus. But we all know that ceteris paribus isn't true most of the time. Okay, it's time to do the reveal. All right, this is the A for the day question. What is the technical name for money in your pocket? And Keith is getting ready to jump on the buzzer, I can see. What is the technical name? What do economists actually call this money in your pocket thing?
M1.
No, M1 is part of the money supply. That's down here. Oh, fair enough. Currency and circulation is part of M1 too, but that's not quite it. What is money in your pocket?
Liquid funds.
That's a good answer. Not what I'm looking for. Joey, any ideas?
I was going to say liquid as well, but
liquid is a good answer.
Yeah, I can't really think of it right now.
Okay.
Currency and circulation?
No.
Pocket money.
Huh?
Pocket money.
Pocket money is good. Not the right answer. Stefan?
I was going to say something regarding liquidity as well.
Well, you're on the right track. Here is, okay, you ready for a clue? What is the L in LM? What does that mean? Literally, it means liquidity, but that's not what Keynes meant it to mean. What does liquidity mean in the LM curve? What does the M mean in LM? That's the easy one. The M stands for money, or more precisely, money supply. What's the L stand for? What do we know about every point on the LM curve?
Is it money demand?
It is money demand. Way to go, Sid. So this is literally money demand. Okay. Now we're getting there. I know we're running out of time, but that's okay. This is so exciting. You're going to want to hear the end. Okay, what affects money demand? We mentioned two things. The first was income.
And then interest?
Is income changing in this story so far? We haven't said anything about income, so no. But the interest rate just went up. When interest rates rise, what happens to money demand?
It goes down.
It goes down. Because people think about the cash that's in their pocket. Aspen, how much interest are you earning on the cash that's in your pocket?
I'm not earning any interest in the money.
You're not earning any interest at all. But you know you can take that money and deposit it in the bank and earn interest. And now the interest rate is higher, which makes it attractive. So when interest rates rise, money leaves your pocket and enters the supply of funds in financial markets. Okay, does everybody understand that? We're almost to the punchline. I mean, that really is the big punchline, but there's another punchline. Anybody have questions about that? Hard to see Aaron's body language today, just saying. And who's on the phone? Somebody is calling in by phone and they have no name. It's just the phone image. Okay, does anybody not understand the story so far, the basic story that we're telling? If so, speak up. All right. So the short answer to the story is, what happens when government borrows $100 billion more? What happens to the pot of savings?
It increases in size.
It gets bigger. Yes. Okay. It gets bigger by the amount of money that people are taking out of their pocket and putting it into financial markets. So I kind of set you up with a false premise implying that the pot of savings was a fixed amount. It's not. Okay. So I apologize for that. Not really. Okay. So what's the key element in this story that determines how much crowding out occurs?
Interest rates.
Okay, that's a good answer. That's the B answer. Okay, remember what's going on here. Increase in demand for loanable funds, higher interest rates. People take money out of their pocket. They put it in the supply of funds in financial markets, which reduces the amount of crowding out that takes place, right? So what determines how much crowding out takes place?
Does it have something to do with interest elasticity?
What determines the amount of crowding out is how much money people pull out of their pockets and put in financial markets. And what causes that response is indeed the interest elasticity of money demand. So all that nasty stuff that we taught earlier in the week turns out to matter in a big way. The greater the interest elasticity of money demand, the less crowding out is going to occur. Good job, guys. You figured it out. Any questions? All right. I don't exactly know how to save this picture, and I think you'd probably like me to save this. So worst case, I will simply take a picture, a screenshot, and share it with you that way. All right. Any questions before we call it a day?
So higher elasticity leads to more crowding out?
Higher elasticity leads to less crowding out.
Okay.
Higher elasticity means the more sensitive people are to changes in the interest rate, causing them to put money into financial markets, take it out of their pockets, put it in financial markets. So that is an important question.
Thank you.
Yep. Anybody else?
Are we working in groups for the next assignment? Did we?
We are. You're working in groups for every assignment from here on out.
Okay.
Okay. And another thing about the assignments, the purpose of the assignments isn't to grade you. The purpose of the assignments is, I think the best way to learn this stuff is by working through problems. And so assignments are the way to do that, because that's what we would be doing in class if we were in class, right? I would be setting something up and then saying, okay, figure this out. So we're just going to turn those into homework problems, and that way you will earn more homework points. No one assignment is worth very much, but you know, so there. Yeah, I'm sharing my office apparently with my kids.
Do you think UMW is going to switch to the pass-fail system like the UNC school system did?
I honestly have no idea. Is that something that you would want to do?
I have mixed opinions about it.
Not really, because I have good grades, so it would really boost my GPA up if I kept it there.
I mean, that's kind of why they've given you the option, and they've extended the date. You know, I think that anybody who comes to these meetings and does the homework problem, I can't see how you would get less than a passing grade. So
I know Rycroft sent out an email this morning asking for our opinions about it. So I don't know if he's planning to do it for just his class like alone, but even if he does, it would still affect our GPA somehow. So I don't know how he would scale it.
Sure. Also, I don't think teachers can unilaterally give pass-fail grades, because when we try to report the grades, what shows up is the system that we're under.
Yeah.
So, but maybe then he's going to lobby with all of you to change to pass-fail.
I don't know.
So, anyway. All right. Thanks a lot, guys. I know we ran over time, but at least I had fun. Hopefully some of you had fun as well. All right. Harry, we're meeting right after this, right?
Yes,
all
please.
right. So the rest of you may leave, and I will see you Wednesday.
Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Dr. Greenlaw.
Thank you.
Thanks for all your hard work.
Thank you. Take care.
Yep.
Take care.
All right.
Do you know who my partner is for the upcoming assignment? I don't remember.
It's the same as your partner for the last assignment.
Okay.
But let me, oh, that didn't work.
So that would be Chester. All right.
No, that's not what I wanted to do.
And Dr. Greenlaw, I'm just going to go to the bathroom quickly.
Yeah, sure. Let's take the eraser. That worked. Okay, Shift, Command, 4. Got it. Okay. What's up, Matthew?
I just wanted to confirm that my partner.
Oh,
is-
sure. Yes. Sorry, let me pull that up. Right now, your partner is Chester.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.